Dinosaurs by Tim Vickery. Chapter 1. Finding Fossils. On a cold winter's day in 1811, a boy and a girl were walking beside the sea in Lyme Regis, southwest England. They were alone, and they walked slowly, looking at the stones under their feet. The sea on their right was still and grey. On their left, near the land, there were a lot of large broken rocks. The children were looking for something. The girl, Mary Anning, was about 12 years old. Every few minutes, she picked up a stone, looked at it carefully, and put it in her bag. Then the boy, her older brother Joseph, began to climb over the broken rocks. It was dangerous. Both children knew that. There had been a storm the night before, and some rocks had fallen into the sea. Another big rock could fall at any time. But the morning after a storm was also the best time to look for fossils. The bones of animals or parts of plants that had become hard and changed into rock. After a few minutes, Joseph called out to his sister, "Mary, quick, come and look at this." When Mary climbed up to him, he showed her a line of teeth, half a meter long in the broken rock. And behind the teeth, there were some bones, like the head of a strange animal. "It's a crocodile, isn't it?" Joseph said. "We found a crocodile in the rocks." Mary looked carefully at the head of the strange animal that Joseph had found. "What's that round thing?" she asked. "Look, there, behind the teeth." As she cleaned away some sand from the head, a bony circle stared back at them. "That must be its eye," Mary said. "Look, it's almost as big as my head." Her brother laughed. "And its mouth is as big as your body." "Be careful, Mary. Look at those teeth. It's going to eat you." "Don't be silly," Mary said. "It's dead. It died hundreds of years ago. Come on. We've got to find the rest of its body too." Some men helped the children to get the bones of the dead animal out of the rock. It was about 4 meters long, with flat, bony hands and a long tail. It had huge eyes and a long mouth full of sharp teeth. At first, people thought it was a crocodile, but it was not. It was an animal quite different from anything alive in the world today. In 1818, 2 scientists called Henry de la Beche and William Conybeare gave it the name Ichthyosaurus. Mary Anning was wrong about one thing. The ichthyosaur did not die hundreds of years ago. It died millions of years ago, at a time which scientists today call the Jurassic period. But Mary Anning was very clever. She knew how to find the bones of dead animals. All her life, she looked for bones and fossils near her home in Lyme Regis. She found many more ichthyosaurs and a different sea animal, a plesiosaur. The plesiosaur had a round, flat body, 4 flat hands, and a very long neck, several meters long, with a very small head at the end of it. She found a strange flying animal too, a pterosaur. Pterosaurs had long beaks full of sharp teeth and wings made of skin. Some of them had wings as big as the wings of a small plane. At this time, in the early 1800s, people were very interested in bones and fossils. Lots of people came to Lyme Regis to see the strange animals that Mary Anning had found. Among them were William Buckland and Gideon Mantell. William Buckland was a clever scientist from Oxford University. He was very interested in animals, and he liked to watch them and learn about them. In fact, he kept a lot of animals in his house, not just cats and dogs, but snakes, insects, a lot of birds, and a real live bear. Some of Buckland's ideas were very unusual. He liked to eat animals, but not just the animals that people usually eat, like cows and sheep. He wanted to taste every bird, fish, insect and animal in the world. So every time he found a new type of animal, he cooked and ate it. Buckland was also interested in rocks and fossils, and he rode all over England on his old horse looking for fossils. He often visited Mary Anning in Lyme Regis and wrote about the ichthyosaurs and pterosaurs. Then one day, in the village of Stonesfield near Oxford, he discovered some fossil bones and teeth. The bones were enormous, and the teeth were sharp, like those of a meat-eater. So, in 1824, Buckland wrote about his animal. He called it Megalosaurus, big lizard. Gideon Mantell was also very interested in Mary's work. He was a doctor who lived in the town of Lewes in southeast England. One day in 1822, his wife met some workmen who were using rocks to mend the road near her house. They gave her an interesting rock that they had found. She showed it to her husband when he came home. Dr. Mantell was surprised. "That's not a rock at all," he said. "It's a tooth. A fossilized tooth." "But look how big it is," she said. "What animal does it come from?" "I don't know," Dr. Mantell said. "I don't know of any animal with teeth as big as this." Dr. Mantell went back to the place where the workmen had got the rocks and found some huge bones there. He decided that the bones and the tooth came from the same animal. But what was the animal like? For 3 years he wondered about this. He talked to his wife and friends, but he did not tell the world about it. He decided that the tooth was like the tooth of an iguana, a kind of large lizard up to 2 meters long. But the bones came from an animal much, much bigger, 18 meters long. At last, in 1825, Dr. Mantell wrote about his animal, and he called it Iguanodon. Later, he sometimes said that he found the tooth, and sometimes that his wife did. 7 years later, in 1832, Dr. Mantell found some bones from a very different animal. This animal, he said, had a very thick skin. He called it Hylaeosaurus. Another English scientist, Richard Owen, read about these strange animals. Owen knew a lot about bones, and he loved to cut up dead animals, often in his own home. When Owen spent months cutting up a dead rhinoceros, his wife was very unhappy about the terrible smell. In 1842, Owen wrote a book about the animals that Buckland, Mantell, and other people had found. He called his book Dinosauria, and he was the first person to use the name dinosaur, which means terrible lizard. He said that Megalosaurus, Iguanodon, and Hylaeosaurus came from 3 different groups of dinosaur, and scientists still use these 3 groups today. Owen was not a very nice man, but he was a great teacher. He wanted everyone to know about the dinosaurs. So he had some models of dinosaurs made for a park in Crystal Palace in London. The models were as big as real dinosaurs, and you can still see them there today. On the 1st of January, 1853, Owen held a dinner party for 21 scientists inside the model of the Iguanodon. But Dr. Mantell was not there. He had died the year before. Scientists all over the world read Owen's book. Some of the scientists inside the Iguanodon came from Germany and Belgium. They found dinosaurs in their countries too. And in the 1870s, 2 Americans, Othniel C. Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope, began to find dinosaurs in North America. Lots and lots of them. It was an exciting time in the American West, but it was a difficult, dangerous place to work. There was a lot of fighting everywhere, and the scientists carried guns to defend themselves. But people were building railways, and sometimes the railway builders found bones when they were digging through rocks. So it was just the right place for dinosaur hunters. Marsh and Cope were not friends. In fact, they hated each other. They hid bones from each other, spied on each other, and sometimes they stole each other's bones too. They argued with each other in newspapers and books. Each man tried to find more dinosaur bones than the other. The fight between them, which went on for about 20 years, was called the Bone Wars. Marsh won the Bone Wars. He discovered 80 new types of dinosaur, while Cope only discovered 56. But the Bone Wars made dinosaur hunting very popular, and by the time Marsh and Cope died, everyone knew about dinosaurs. Since then, scientists have found dinosaurs in South America, Asia, Africa, India, Europe, and Australia. Some of the most interesting dinosaurs today are the ones that scientists are finding in China. People have even found a few dinosaurs in Antarctica. In fact, just like people, dinosaurs lived all over the world. Chapter 2. Dinosaur Numbers. Everything about dinosaurs is extraordinary. Many of them were big, much, much bigger than humans. The biggest of all, Argentinosaurus, weighed more than 15 elephants. The tallest dinosaur, Sauroposeidon, could lift its head 18.5 meters above the ground. That is tall enough to look in through the 6th floor window of a modern building. The longest dinosaur, Diplodocus, was 35 meters long, longer than 3 buses, and its tail was 21 meters long. The end of that tail could move frighteningly fast, fast enough to knock a man's head off. Many dinosaurs were very, very dangerous. Spinosaurus, for example, was much bigger than an elephant. It had a mouth like a crocodile, but much, much bigger. It had 100 sharp teeth. An animal like that could probably kill and eat a human in 2 or 3 minutes. Luckily, however, there were no humans alive at the time of the dinosaurs. That is because the dinosaurs lived an enormously long time ago. It is really hard to understand how long, but it is important to try. How long have there been people like us, modern humans, on Earth? Well, scientists say that we have been here for about 190,000 years. But before that, there were early humans, people who were almost human, but a little bit different from us. The oldest early human that scientists have found died 3.2 million years ago. That is a very long time ago, but it is nothing to the time that the dinosaurs lived. The last of the big dinosaurs died 65 million years ago, so all dinosaur bones are at least 65 million years old. But many of them are a lot older, of course, because that is when dinosaurs ended. When did they begin? The first small dinosaur appeared about 230 million years ago. So dinosaurs lived on Earth for 165 million years. That is more than 50 times longer than any kind of humans have lived on Earth. Look at the timeline on this page. It shows 3 time periods: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. The first dinosaurs appeared during the Triassic period. A lot more dinosaurs appeared during the Jurassic period. And even more dinosaurs lived until the end of the Cretaceous period. Then they all disappeared, very suddenly. Chapter 3: The First Dinosaurs. Because the dinosaurs lived for such a long time, their story is a story of change. Slowly, over 165 million years, the world changed. And the dinosaurs changed too. The first dinosaurs were not very big or frightening. They looked like small chickens. They ran around on 2 legs, but instead of wings, they had hands with 5 fingers. They had long tails, small heads, and a mouth with teeth instead of a bird's beak. In the time before the dinosaurs, there were lots of different animals. But about 250 million years ago, something terrible happened. Thousands and thousands of volcanoes exploded. This made the sky very dark, so it was impossible to see the sun, perhaps for years. Not surprisingly, 95% of all animals and plants died. Only a few kinds of small animals which did not need much food stayed alive. Some of these small animals were called archosaurs. The earth they lived in was a very different place. There were plants, but no grass, no flowers, and no fruit. And all the continents that we know today, Europe, North America, South America, Asia, Africa, Antarctica, were quite different. All the land was just one large continent, called Pangaea. So these little archosaurs could walk from one side of Pangaea to the other. In the 1960s, an archosaur called Marasuchus was found in Argentina. It was very small, just 10 centimeters high. It ran on 2 legs and had hands with 5 fingers. It had a long tail and a mouth with lots of very small teeth. And it probably ate insects and little animals. But it could run very fast. One of the important things about dinosaurs was that they had legs under their bodies, like birds. That helped them to run away from enemies like crocodiles, which have their legs beside their bodies. It helped them to grow tall, too. Another archosaur was Eoraptor, also found in Argentina. It was a little bigger than Marasuchus, about 30 centimeters high, like a small dog, and 1 meter long. It also ran on 2 legs and ate insects and small animals, but it only had 3 fingers on each hand. It is one of the earliest dinosaurs of all. These little archosaurs were not the only animals that were alive on Pangaea. There were animals like crocodiles, and there were also small flying animals like the pterosaurs that Mary Anning found. The pterosaurs had wings made of skin between their fingers. They had long tails and beaks with teeth. They flew all over Pangaea, and sometimes they killed the little archosaurs and ate them. All the rest of the world was sea, lots and lots of it. The sea was full of ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. These were in the same family as the archosaurs, but they had learned to swim and live in the sea. Some ichthyosaurs were small, but others were huge, more than 15 meters long. They had long mouths full of teeth and huge eyes to see in the dark. As millions and millions of years passed, all of these animals evolved in different ways. The small 2-legged archosaurs, like Marasuchus and Eoraptor, evolved over time into the first real dinosaurs. Scientists make a picture, like a family tree, to show this. In the picture, the oldest animals, the archosaurs, are at the bottom, and the most recent dinosaurs are at the top. Richard Owen, in 1842, said that there were 3 main types of dinosaur: meat-eating dinosaurs and 2 types of plant-eating dinosaurs. Scientists today agree with him. The meat-eating dinosaurs are called theropods. The plant-eating dinosaurs with long necks and tails are called sauropods. And the ones with extraordinary thick skins are called ornithischians. One of the first theropods was Coelophysis. It ran on 2 legs, like Marasuchus and Eoraptor. But Coelophysis was much bigger, about 1 meter high and 2 or 3 meters long. It had 3 strong claws on its hands, and a long tail and long mouth like a crocodile. It could probably stand up on its back legs as tall as a man. But it was not heavy, because its bones were full of air, like the bones of a bird. It was as long as a small car, but it weighed the same as a 7-year-old child. So it could run very fast and hunt smaller animals for food. The first Coelophysis was found by an American scientist called David Baldwin in New Mexico in 1881. Baldwin often spent months looking for fossils, all alone, in the middle of winter, with only his horse beside him. He sent the bones of the Coelophysis to Edward Drinker Cope during the Bone Wars. 60 years later, in 1947, lots more Coelophysis were found at a place called Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. It is New Mexico's most famous dinosaur. A very early sauropod was Thecodontosaurus, found near Bristol in England in 1836. It was only the 4th dinosaur ever discovered. It was not very tall, but up to 2.5 meters long. It probably walked on 2 legs and used its 4 clawed hands to help it eat plants and small insects. A much bigger Triassic sauropod was Plateosaurus. Plateosaurus was up to 10 meters long and weighed 700 kilograms. It was 3 meters high when it stood on its back legs. This plant-eating dinosaur probably walked on 2 legs and used the claws on its hands to hold the branches of trees while it ate. The first plateosaur was found in Bavaria, in Germany, in 1837. It was the first dinosaur found outside England, and the 5th dinosaur to be given a name. Since then, 50 more plateosaurs have been found in France, Germany, Norway, Switzerland, and Greenland. An even bigger early sauropod was Rheocosaurus, found in Argentina. It was up to 2.75 meters high, 11 meters long, and weighed up to 3 tons. It needed to eat a lot of plants every day in order to stay alive. And by the end of the Triassic, there were a lot more plants for these dinosaurs to eat. By the end of the Triassic, the little 2-legged archosaurs had evolved into 2 main types of dinosaurs: the plant-eating sauropods, like Plateosaurus, and the meat-eating theropods, like Coelophysis. The 3rd type of dinosaur, the ornithischians, came later. But slowly, over millions of years, the Earth continued to change. And as the Earth changed, the dinosaurs changed too. They grew bigger and stronger and much, much stranger. Chapter 4: Bigger and Stronger. As the Triassic period changed into the Jurassic period, the Earth got warmer. And as the Earth got warmer, the dinosaurs got bigger. There was more water in the air, and this helped plants to grow. As the plants grew bigger, there was more food for the animals to eat. So the plant-eating dinosaurs grew bigger and bigger. The largest Jurassic dinosaurs were the sauropods, the big plant-eaters. They had very big, heavy bodies with long necks and tails. Because their bodies were so heavy, they walked on all 4 feet. They used their long necks to eat leaves from tall trees, and they used their long, strong tails to defend themselves. They had small heads, with very small brains, often about 100 grams, or as big as an orange. One of the earliest Jurassic sauropods is Barapasaurus, which was found in India. It was 18 meters long and weighed up to 55 tons. But that was only the beginning. In the middle and later Jurassic periods, the sauropod dinosaurs began to grow very big indeed. By the mid-Jurassic, some sauropods could reach leaves that were 10 meters from the ground. The bones in these dinosaurs' necks were hollow in places, so they were not as heavy as other bones. That made it easier to lift these very long necks. The sauropods' hands still had fingers, which they could use to hold trees and plants, but they mostly walked on 4 legs. They could not run because they were too heavy. In some ways, they were like elephants. They probably moved slowly, and they lived in large family groups or herds. Most big sauropods had at least 100 teeth. Some had 600. But even for an animal with so many teeth, some plants were probably hard to eat. Scientists have found stones in sauropod stomachs. They think that the dinosaurs ate the stones, which then helped to break up the leaves that they ate. 2 of the largest sauropods were Diplodocus and Apatosaurus. These were found in America in the 1870s by Cope and Marsh. They had small heads, heavy bodies, and big stomachs. They ate a lot of food and grew very quickly. A young apatosaur probably grew 15 kilograms heavier every day. All these animals had very long, strong tails, which they used to defend themselves. Shunosaurus, a dinosaur from China, actually had sharp, bony spikes on the end of its tail to hit its enemies with. Another big Jurassic dinosaur was Brachiosaurus, found in the USA and Africa. An adult brachiosaur weighed up to 50 tons and was 26 meters long. Unlike most dinosaurs, its front legs were longer than its back legs. This meant that it could lift its huge head on its long neck, about 16 meters above the ground. On top of its head, between its eyes, Brachiosaurus had a big, hollow nose full of air. Scientists think that it used this nose to make loud noises, perhaps to sing to its friends and frighten its enemies. Then there was Mamenchisaurus, another enormous Jurassic dinosaur from China. This huge dinosaur was 25 meters long. Its neck was 12 meters long, one of the longest necks of any animal ever discovered. But why were these dinosaurs so big? Well, one reason is that the world was getting warmer and wetter, so there was more plant food for them to eat. But there was another important reason: safety. It is easier for big animals to defend themselves against their enemies, and these big Jurassic sauropods had a lot of very big, dangerous enemies. One of their most dangerous enemies was Allosaurus. Allosaurus was a big theropod, a meat-eating dinosaur. It was about 5 meters high, much taller than a man, and 12 meters long. It weighed 2 tons or more. It ran on 2 legs and had 3-fingered hands with long, sharp claws. It had small horns over its eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth like kitchen knives. It used these terrible claws and teeth to kill and eat its food. And its favorite food was big sauropods like Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, and Brachiosaurus. But how did it kill these enormous animals? Allosaurus was big, but Apatosaurus was much bigger. It was one of the biggest animals on Earth. It was 20 to 25 meters long and weighed up to 28 tons, more than a family of elephants. And with its long, strong tail, it could kill a small dinosaur in a second. Sometimes, perhaps, a brave, hungry allosaur jumped onto the back of an adult apatosaur and tried to kill it with its terrible teeth and claws. But that was very difficult and dangerous, so perhaps they did it a different way. Some scientists think that allosaurs hunted in family groups, so perhaps 4 or 5 terrible meat-eaters all jumped onto the back of one apatosaur together. That was probably easier, and there was plenty of meat for all of them when they killed it. And like lions today, they probably did not try to kill the biggest and strongest apatosaur. They looked for an animal that was old or ill and killed that. And sometimes they found an animal that was already dead. But Allosaurus was a very good killer. Scientists are sure about that. The dinosaur scientist Thomas Holtz says that dinosaurs, like Allosaurus, changed very little over 100 million years. That means, of course, that they were very successful at what they did. And what they did was hunt, kill, and eat sauropods. Another terrible Jurassic meat-eater was Ceratosaurus. This dinosaur was smaller than Allosaurus, but it was still taller than a man. It was 6 to 8 meters long and heavier than 2 horses. Ceratosaurus also ran on 2 legs. It had long, sharp claws on its 4-fingered hands and a mouth full of very sharp teeth. It had 3 small horns on its head and an unusually strong tail. But unlike Allosaurus, it did not always hunt big sauropods. The scientist Robert Bakker has found lots of Ceratosaurus teeth near the bones of fish and small crocodiles. He thinks that Ceratosaurus used its big, strong tail to swim and hunted for its food in the water. During the Jurassic period, the continent of Pangaea began to break into 2 continents, Laurasia and Gondwana. The Atlantic Ocean appeared. At first, it was about 50 kilometers wide. Much of modern Europe was underwater then. So there were lots of fish for Ceratosaurus to eat in Jurassic seas, lakes, and rivers. But there were lots of other animals there too. In the Jurassic seas, the ichthyosaurs grew even bigger and stronger. They were hunters, with enormous eyes and long mouths full of sharp teeth. And they could swim very, very fast, probably at 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. There were plesiosaurs in the sea too. Plesiosaurs did not look like fish. They had round, flat bodies, with 4 huge, flat hands that they used to push themselves through the water. They had short tails, but very long necks, sometimes over 10 meters long. Some had very small heads, but others had huge heads, 3 meters long, bigger than any other dinosaur head. In the Jurassic skies, a new type of pterosaur appeared, the pterodactyl. Pterodactyls had longer necks than Triassic pterosaurs, and they had bigger brains too. Most of them had long mouths full of sharp teeth, and many of them ate fish. Most pterodactyls were as big as large birds today, but a few were much, much bigger. In fact, the largest pterodactyl of all, Quetzalcoatlus, had wings 12 meters wide, bigger than a small plane. But Quetzalcoatlus lived in the Cretaceous period, which came after the Jurassic. It was in the Cretaceous that dinosaurs grew really big. Chapter 5. Big, Bad, and Dangerous. During the Cretaceous period, Pangaea, which was once a single continent, continued to break into smaller parts. The Earth began to look more like the world today, several different continents with large seas between them. This meant that, as time passed, different dinosaurs evolved in each continent. The dinosaurs of China, for example, were different from those of South America. But in every continent, there were large plant-eating sauropods. They grew even larger because the Cretaceous world was warmer and wetter than before. So plants grew bigger and stronger. And for the first time, some plants had fruit and flowers. So there was a lot more food for the big dinosaurs to eat. The biggest dinosaur of all was probably Argentinosaurus. This enormous animal was between 33 and 41 meters long, 6 to 7 meters high, and weighed between 75 and 90 tons. That is more than several families of African elephants. To keep its huge body alive, one Argentinosaur probably needed to eat 2 or 3 large trees every day. There were probably thousands of these enormous animals in South America, so just think about the number of trees that were eaten every day. It is hard to understand how any enemy could kill Argentinosaurus. It was just too big. Most meat-eaters probably just waited for it to die and ate it then. But there were plenty of large meat-eating dinosaurs in the Cretaceous. Perhaps, from time to time, some of them did try to kill a baby Argentinosaur or a sick or old animal. If they tried to kill a healthy adult, they probably got hurt or killed. Not all of the terrible killers in the Cretaceous were big. In 1964, John Ostrom, a scientist from Yale University in America, discovered Deinonychus. This animal was too small to kill Argentinosaurus, but it was still very dangerous. It was about 3 meters long, as tall as a man, and probably covered in feathers like a bird. It had a big brain and a mouth as long as a man's leg, full of sharp teeth. Its hands had 3 fingers, with long, sharp claws, and on the second toe of its back feet there was another big, dangerous claw. Deinonychus weighed about 80 to 100 kilograms, and it could run very fast. Scientists think that Deinonychus hunted in groups, like lions today. When they found a large plant-eating dinosaur, 5, 10, or even 20 Deinonychus jumped onto it, all together. They bit it with their sharp teeth and cut it with their terrible sharp claws until it died. Then they ate it. Deinonychus was very frightening, but Utahraptor was even more dangerous. It had terrible teeth and claws like Deinonychus, but it was much bigger. It was 6 to 7 meters long, taller than the tallest horse, and it weighed up to 1.1 tons.